Hello, welcome. Thank you for being with us here virtually. This is a very large crowd in attendance, and I know that is because of who we have here with us tonight, Madonna Thunderhawk, Marcy Gilbert, and Dr. Elizabeth Castle. I want to remind everyone that this event is recorded and a copy will be shared with the Warrior Women Project. Please keep your camera on if you are comfortable doing so, that is preferred, but keep yourself muted if you're not actually trying to speak. Posted in the chat, coming soon in the chat, is the link to the Warrior Women website and the link to the shop to support the project, as well as links to the Warrior Women's social media accounts. I am Kelly Carrasco-Lahav, a children's librarian at the Sonoma County Library, and this event is hosted by the Sonoma County Library. And before we begin this panel discussion, I want to share the land acknowledgement that my colleague at the Sonoma County History and Genealogy Library, Zaida Delgado, prepared. We invite everyone to take a moment to honor these ancestral lands that we are collectively gathered upon and encourage all of us to think of ways to become better stewards of the lands we inhabit. We acknowledge our libraries occupy the traditional homelands of the Coast Miwok, Kashaya, Southern Pomo, and Wakbo tribal nations whose descendants still live here today. We recognize the historical and ongoing violence of settler colonialism and affirm indigenous sovereignty. We will continue to hold ourselves accountable to the needs of the indigenous people of Sonoma County, California, and beyond. Without further ado, we are here to talk with Madonna Thunderhawk, Marcella Gilbert, and Dr. Elizabeth Castle. Madonna is a renowned Lakota activist, matriarch, elder, and the original gangster granny, radicalized in the 1960s within the American Indian movement. She is a powerful voice for indigenous resistance, sovereignty, and a defender of indigenous children's rights. We also have Marcella Gilbert here. Marcella is Madonna's daughter, a renowned Lakota and Dakota activist and leader, longtime member of AIM, co-founder of the Nassau Society to whistleblow human trafficking and violence against women, and a community organizer with a focus on food sovereignty. Dr. Castle is a Shawnee-descended anti-racist educator and co-director of the film we all watched, Warrior Women. Dr. Gilbert, do you have any opening remarks before we start the Q&A session? Or Beth, do you have any opening remarks?
Oh, I was like,
sorry.
Marcy, I think she should be called doctor as well.
Okay.
I'm a doctor of history. I'm here
Two
to.
doctors, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I just had a moment where I was like, cool. Oh, missing an earring. Sorry. So, yeah, we're really excited to whenever we have a chance to talk to librarians, because just like historians, y'all have a bad rap, right? Like but the most important thing that we build everything on is is the evidence, is the archives, is the original stories. So Warrior Women film is just one part of the Warrior Women project that's been going on, and we've been collaborating for some 20 years, ever since I was a dissertation student. So a lot of this emerges, and what the work that we do now is very much about how do we break down and make real beyond all these institutions that are often getting in the way or mitigating the story. So, libraries, universities, we have a lot to do to start undoing the damage of settler colonialism through through the way we think and look at everything. So there's nothing like intellectualizing something to kill the mood, but the hope that we have now is we can have a good conversation about all the things that are ongoing, and the way that the film is just a moment for us to look deeper into the lives. Madonna and Marcy were kind enough to let us use their life as a vehicle for telling this bigger story of activism. And, you know, we're constantly on, we're still moving. We're not like the normal film. A film is something that just happens and it's an event. This film continues with the work of the oral history project, the curriculum building, and the ongoing community-based activism. So that's the framework.
Thank you. Now should we move on to the question session? Okay. The three of you are amazing. My first question is for Madonna. Madonna, how do you get people with the power to change things to actually move and act in their full power? And I'm basing this off of when in the film we see you visiting a lot of officials and leaders pushing for 2 Indigenous children to come home to their grandma. So how do you get people to act when they have the power to do so?
Our reservation, our communities, our society is a lot different than the rest of the country. We don't have a worry of overpopulation. So it's basically better, I think, in helping to organize around issues, because I can't say it's easier, but it's more cut and dried, I think, because it's almost automatic that your issue comes from the community's input. So you do, if you want to say you're a community organizer, you actually have to be a community organizer. You have to actually have moccasins on the ground. So that's what we do. We build our local support and, around that issue, because the issue comes from the community. So that, you got a head start right there. And then if you're community-based, then you don't have to convince anybody in power to do much. Some issues it'll take a while, but it also is when it takes a while, it's a good chance to educate. So you take advantage of all, situations and to get the job done.
Thank you. Did you want to talk about the Indian Child Welfare Act and its application at all, or its non-application at times? Oh.
Well, I was around at the time when the political battle took place to even get it passed. Mm-hmm. People assume that things happened, and that it's a real good law and the states are violating it. And yeah, that's true. But it was a major battle to get it passed anyway. But it passed, and the different states that have reservations, mostly the Western states in the United States that have larger reservations and many Native communities, the state powers that be, usually the Department of Social Services in these states, have caught on, and they've known how to get around a lot of the provisions in the act. So that's why the battle is still on to, for example, to get the state of South Dakota hold their feet to the fire to the original provisions of the Indian child welfare, because they've learned how to find the loopholes. So we've had to there's an issue of the state of South Dakota, for example, they're making legal orphans. And in South Dakota, because it's a red state, all you have to do is follow the money. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of issues that's the background. So yeah, it's and of course the law is under fire, because there's a lot of non-native adopted parents that want to have their way. Mm-hmm. And they feel like the laws don't apply to them, but so yeah, it's a constant battle. It's not cut and dried. Things are going to happen around the law.
Yeah.
This is the, United States is supposedly the land of laws, it's ruled by the rule of law, but that just depends on who's in political power where.
Mm-hmm. Who you are. Thank you. Another question for all three. From your experience, what are some ways that everyone can support Indigenous young people, leaders, and future movers and shakers?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Marcy. You get the potato. Unmute yourself.
Okay, can you ask the question again, please?
Definitely. What are ways everyone can support Indigenous young people, leaders, future movers and shakers, young people?
Well, there's all kinds of ways. It depends on where you're at in the country. But first of all, supporting, teaching the actual history in school
Mm-hmm.
and in universities, the true history.
Mm-hmm.
That includes, how can you have history in this United States without including us?
Mm-hmm.
And we deserve more than a paragraph, because a lot of what people benefit from today is because of what happened to us and the contributions, not just what happened to us as, the genocide and all that, but the contributions that we've
Mm-hmm.
made, and highlighting Native people who have whatever, wherever they were in whatever time period, Native people have excelled in a lot of different areas, but we never hear about it, even to this day. I can go into the tribal school here on the reservation and they don't talk about, the, what was her name? Her last name was Tall Chief, and she was one of
Maria Tall Chief, the ballerina?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Because we have some of her bios.
yeah, and are, like Jim Thorpe, they're making a movie about him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many
Yeah.
Native people who have excelled beyond, the normal standards of this country, but you never hear about them.
Right.
You never hear about their successes. You never hear about their families or how they've contributed to what some of the things that we enjoy today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think highlighting the successes all through history and now,
Yeah.
and putting it, giving it the equal space as any other topic, any other group of people. And so because the thing about it is and it's not just for Native young people, it's for all young people, giving young people a sense of identity and something to be proud of,
Mm-hmm.
so that
Everyone's history.
they can move forward in their lives knowing who they are and having pride in who they are can take you a long way.
Yeah.
And so the educational system in this country has a huge responsibility, huge. Yeah. And the fact that teachers are struggle, and they're not paid, what they should. I mean, they spend more time with our kids than us sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't get paid squat.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense to me in this country. It tells me that this government does not value young people
Mm-hmm.
or the future. So I think just finding ways, and as educators and as people who are responsible for the future of our young people, it's our responsibility to find those resources and highlight those certain areas that young people will benefit from, because we all benefit from everybody's history, everybody's role in this society, everybody's struggles, everybody's successes, all that. So it's time to let go of the big lie and start telling the truth.
Yeah, that's completely true. Yeah, and libraries have a big role in that too, in their collections and everything. Thank you. Someone has a question in the chat that they think even on the reservation that the history of American Native Indians is not taught. Why not? I'm not sure who they want to ask to, but
I think we know why not. I mean,
yeah.
that's not a secret. It's a history that does not reflect well. But the thing about that is, even though we know the atrocities that have happened, not just to indigenous people, but others as well, is that same kind of genocide and taking of lands and taking of families and language and all that's still happening now. So it isn't like, oh, the natives had it bad. Well, if it was that bad, why are we allowing this government to continue that? And so it's, I think it's a worldview that us as responsible citizens being part of this United States government, if that's where we sit, if that's who we are, then we need to make our government responsible. I mean, I when I went to school, I was taught that the United States government was created for the people, by the people, all that. And that's not true anymore. And so why don't we change it? Because we're just perpetuating we're perpetuating that act of genocide that is taking place worldwide. In all different, and not just of people, of planet. Especially now. I mean, come on, the planet, we're killing the planet. Can we at least come together to save ourselves? Can we at least do that?
Thank you. Going back, Madonna, can I ask you another question about being in the Bay Area in the 60s and 70s and collaborating with other activist groups like United Farm Workers, the Black Panthers, and just being in the Bay Area in general? How did that inform your activism and your life's work, your outlook?
Well, I think way back then, first of all, we probably wouldn't have been in the Bay Area if it wasn't for the federal government making a program called relocation. It's a relocate U.S. American Indian policy to the federal government, make this program where you signed up and you could go to big cities anywhere in this country that they had a program. Then you could go there and they'd send you to some kind of training or work, vocational training of some sort, and you could get a job and then just become part of the melting pot of this country. And figured, well, get the people off the land, and then they could just probably, be another big land rush, land grab. But anyway, most of us did that, and saw what was going on in the rest of the country, and went home. It was a culture shock for many of our people, and they just went home. But there was some of us, not all of us, but there was some of us that saw what was going on with all the rest of the people in the country. The anti-war movement, that's where most of the young, white people of this country, they were involved in that. And the rest of the people of color were, organizing and just doing, amazing things. But it was a time of awakening. Got to remember that was before, the after World War II, and then the 50s and the early 60s, everybody, it was real, the country was really conservative in many ways. And the young people just, I think after they saw what was happening with the Vietnam War, and they understood politics more, and they realized that the war, they weren't fighting for, freedom and all of that, like World War II. It was a different kind of war. They're fighting for territory and oil and resources of other countries. So that just kind of woke everybody up, and I think what it did for us is to see that, well, at least for me, I could see that, wait a minute, I was in support of everybody else and what was going on with all the other people of color and organizations, but I saw how unique and amazing our whole existence as being indigenous to this land, and how ours was totally unique from everybody else because we're land-based.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized then that we're the only ones can say that.
Mm-hmm.
The only ones in this country that can say that we're land-based, and we'll never be homeless. Houseless, yes, but never be homeless. Mm-hmm. So those are things of pride and awakening that, and all the rest just kind of fell into place, As long as you're involved, you're learning and you're moving.
Yeah. That kind of brings me back to, in the film, we see, like, kind of in the beginning of the film, we see Madonna, you talking about a memory of when you were young and you were at home and you felt, in the movie, they say wild and free. And you were just like, you'd be at the river and you felt at home and you felt yourself. Would you say like that's part of what would like ground your outlook? It's just like remembering feeling at home.
Well, yeah, I guess it, especially for my generation, my age group, we were actually, our society was different. Our different, the way our reservation operates nowadays is totally different from when it was when we were growing up. Everyone was on the land, everyone lived on the land. They had where their grandparents lived, and the ones all the way back to the time when they started reservations. You could say, well, this is where my family's always lived. This one area, this is where we've lived. Well, it's not like that anymore. With federal Indian policy came in the late 60s, and they started housing projects, cluster housing all over the reservation, and that changed a lot, really changed a lot for our people and how we live every day to day. But I think that had a lot of influence also for our generation to see what happened without we didn't even know it was happening. Mm-hmm. It was so, when they flooded our reservation, we lost close to 1 million acres, went underwater for shoreline on the Missouri River. So that our lifestyle practically changed overnight.
Right.
So those kinds, situations happen, but with the memory and the basic values and stuff we had at the time when we were growing up, of what the land really meant to us, and then waking up and finding out about our treaty rights and that our treaties were ratified by Congress. That's why they're the law of the land, and that's why we can still stand on those. They're not something of the past. They're not lost to history. They're valid.
Right.
The United States government has violated every one of them for since they were written, before the ink was even dry.
Yeah.
So, but we haven't. So that's where we still stand. We have those, and we are strong in our beliefs because we educated ourselves, and a lot of that had to do with our awakening back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. The awakening of knowing yourself. Amazing. Are there any issues today that aren't necessarily in the mainstream media that you would like to tell us about, that we should know about, that we should have on our minds?
Kelly, do you mind if, and Madonna, Marcy, if I've been following some of the questions coming up over here in the chat. And, I just want to prove that I'm smart too. I gotta have something important to say, but I'm really like the thing that we started doing this, but like historical recovery work is, we're trying to find better language for it, because how we've crafted the American English language is that there isn't even room for the words we need to describe what's happened, because we when you build these foundations on top, you keep putting cracked foundations on top of each other, right? And so there's, I came at this work like from a political perspective. I worked at the White House as my first job, and people are asking questions about like, why is it that we, even in a woke DEI space, folks are still going to forget usually indigenous issues. And I've studied Black and Native history. I come from that. I look and act like a white woman in lots of traditional ways, but my family, extended family and ancestors look like this experiment of America. And, so more and more and more, and Marcy and Madonna are going to share as well, all of the issues, they're never, they're right now, like, this is a big deal. And we hate to say, it's sort of funny to say it that way, but People magazine, there are Indian people in People magazine. There's Roxanne White. This just came out. So MMIW, thanks to the Gabby Petito, moment, like that incredibly obvious moment to folks who have a chance to learn from this comparative experience where women of color go missing and indigenous women go missing and murdered at extraordinary rates. And I guess what I wanted to say in framing it is that the shortest route to it is that genocide and enslavement are the root histories of the country. And this year was the first time the phrase genocide was used in a proclamation by the White House, keeping in mind it's a proclamation, it has no power, right? Mm-hmm. So when the White House had an initiative on race in 1998, it was very important that it was an initiative because it had no power. When the Kerner Commission, came out after the race rebellions in the 60s, it was important that it had a commission because it had some plenary power. So at the root of it, even though we're never thought we'd have this national dialogue where people are bringing up issues that normally would never be brought up. Our knowledge level and experience level is so low. It's just so difficult to have that like informed conversation. So it's just this idea that, you know, history right now, recovering it and learning it, then accepting it, right, and doing something about it is an emergency act, right? Because it's erasure is all encompassing. And in this case where, like, how can you care or understand these issues if you can't know, if we can't even say, well, it wasn't contact, it was invasion, right? You know, and colonization and displacement and ongoing displacement and erasure. So, you know, that part that, you know, and not doing that in the woke slap you down kind of way, but in the invitation that right now, the greatest, deepest, twisted irony of it all is that the folks who have survived a genocide that's never been recognized are on the front lines of protecting the last remaining bits of biodiversity that we have in the world. Yeah. And people need to hurry the hell up, right? Like it's an emergency to just get out of the way and follow the matriarchs. So that's the part where like, it's hard for people to see, like, we're an action history group, like, you know, learn it, do it, be changed by it. But the first step is it has to be recognized and it has to be part, we have to stop indoctrinating children into our sad little propagandist lie, because we know the kids get it. We just were at an event and, you know, you see Santa Barbara and the middle school kids were amazing. They're just like, so what can we do about this history stuff that, you know, that they're telling us about? That's just this very narrow story. So, you know, so there's that's, I got excited there.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah.
That's good.
If you think of like growing up, I would see all the Leonard Peltier signs when we would just drive to San Francisco. And I just remember seeing them and no one explained them to me. And it wasn't until college that I learned about why I was seeing those signs. Yeah, but.
No, I appreciate that, you know, that, you know, that's the point, is that, you know, it's difficult because people, they don't know what they don't know. And then even when you're coming from a good place, often you can only take what your own intention or your own understanding and sort of place it there. And that's the aspect here, is that, you know, Indigenous women's leadership, if you will, that is even an imposed word. Matriarchy is an imposed word, but the idea is that, you know, we have to start seeing ourselves as all relatives of a planet that needs us to stop destroying it. But even more, like, the hard part now is that we are really in that panic space of, because I'm teaching right now in a place that has just, like, honestly, I duke it out with most everyone here. It can't, the bar can't get too much lower than where I am in Midwest in Ohio. And so we're literally spend every day arguing about what a fact is as a history professor, trying to slowly chip away at it. So there's a part of me that's like, yes, we've advanced in so many ways, but a lot of those is just for a very select few. Mm-hmm. And often it's not built from that deep knowledge base. So that's like the aspect of the library, you know, where you have to go bring and make accessible this history where people are talking and sharing about it, because most of the materials that we have that are written are,
yeah, you can't let it sit on the shelves.
We can't let it sit on the shelves and critique the stuff that we have, because almost the entire, you know, anthropological historical practice was about continuing that erasure. Yeah. Or the entire, like when we say a European lens, I mean, that's no joke. Literally, that's why the Warrior Women Project exists, because everything everyone thought they knew is wrong. And the women carry their own history, and they, you know, and make it available. So that's the part of Warrior Women Project where I'm saying, you want to support something? I'm happy for y'all to support us, because what we're doing is creating next generation involved with Native young people and ally folk, or folk who see this as their responsibility too, to be part of making and putting this history out there and holding people accountable, because they should. I'll take a breather. I can feel I need to
breather.
That was good, Beth. That you said it right. Oh, you said it all. That
All
was
right, we're
good.
done. We'll see ya. Just kidding.
Did we want to open it up to the general participants for questions?
Hi. Yeah, thanks. And Beth, just following up on what you just said, and I really love to support your efforts. This is kind of new to me because it's the first time I've heard about the project. But I think what we're up against in a big way, and I don't know that if the historians speak about it this way, but the way I see it is what we're up against is cultural myths that are firmly rooted in a way that it's just very hard emotionally to let go of. We've just, as a country, recently tried to let go of Columbus Day, to change it to Indigenous Peoples Day. But, I've heard teachers speak about, in Massachusetts, they're still trying to sort that voting out, whether they'll agree to it or not, because Columbus is so much more an icon on the East Coast than he is on the West. But the history is the same, right? You can read about the man, you can read about it and find out what he's done. But what's really hard to do is get people to change the story that they've been telling themselves, that's so deeply ingrained and around Thanksgiving as well. And that's kind of a myth, a cultural myth. And I wonder, if the historians have thought about speaking that mythology is something very deep, as just as the story of the Garden of Eden is for some people a belief, for other people it's a myth. But I wonder if historians have thought about speaking about what this country has been telling its children and people for generations, the myth of Columbus, the myth of America, and the myth of progress, I guess, and that kind of thing. And I think it's what we're up against.
For real though.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing I would say here, just because you're getting at the heart of everything and what we do, or I think because we're like an action biased people, we're like, what's the action I need to take? And I understand that 100%, but I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, of course, to Madonna's experience, but it's been 25 or 27 years now that I started on a path where whatever the institution was, I was trying to mold it to my will, which doesn't work that well because they're institutions, but to push it and figure out where I could be most effective. And one of the hardest things, and I guess this is why these talks are so important, is you cannot underestimate how incredibly important it is for you to just talk to your people in your circle, people in your group, have those, and that demystifying, I try it, like, you don't know how much I'm in the middle of it right now, teaching a general American history class in Midwest Ohio at a small branch university where I grew up. The things that have been said to me, like, keep me up at night. But in this case where I'm like, I don't want to deal with the core curriculum, but our core curriculum in this country is shameful. It's violent. It's just disgusting. It's just poorly done history. Not of historians, like, no, most of the group isn't hanging out, getting together and making these decisions for sure. But, this is where, this thanks-taking, like, I just don't say Thanksgiving, but thanks-taking, but at harvest dinner time, gather with families and reflect. And there's a lot of good media out there, right? Warrior Women is a great thing to watch. But all those little things matter, because in a town where I am right now, just folks, they don't even know how to use the language. Like Ohio, it's erasure, utter and complete erasure. But the part where you're always trying to think, how do you appeal to people? Well, one of the simple things in that notion of, like, we're a country of laws and those frameworks, is that until we change social attitudes, the only single way that we're really going to be able to, for example, get folks to see why supporting treaty rights, or see why standing behind the power of a treaty, which is the highest act of intergovernmental exchange that you can have actually saves us all when it comes to this. And that was the power of what, Madonna, Marcy, and others, and these women built out of Women of All Red Nations into the Black Hills Alliance to stop a uranium mining company. Standing Rock is also rooted in that genius. And at COP26, you have folks right now, sort of declaring that. So that's the part where, Indigenous women are on the front lines, and, and their bodies and children and life, life ways are violated and devalued. So it's connected with land. So all those things together, but I couldn't agree more. Just like even that act of just saying we should consider what we're doing this week enough to say, yeah, gather for a harvest dinner, but let's think about, that's when I think about it. Let's think about genocide, right? Let's sit on a table and I know that's, but unless you can pipe me in, and because I can make genocide funny enough to like talk it through, but that's what people are feeling, right? So you do that. You're on Team Warrior Women now, buddy.
Yeah. I tried at Mount Rushmore too. Thank you. They looked at me and they actually said, yeah, I mean, because I said, look, this is the history I read. Why don't you mention that the land was stolen? And they said, yeah, we're trying to get there, basically. Seriously, Mount Rushmore. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about it.
Yeah.
We have another hand up. I'd like to give space for your question.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate this. So where to start? Oh my gosh. So yeah, so this ties into history and about the need for it. And also the lack of understanding and how it puts Native people at odds when they try to stand up for their history. And one of my questions for Madonna and Marcella, who, been on this front line so much for Native visibility and Native rights and restoring history, is I'm going to give you a specific situation and just wondering if you can speak to like how situation, then I'll get my question. So there is these 5 women in just in Marin County, south of where we are, who there was a demonstration in front of a Catholic church. And specifically, there was this Catholic church that had a statue of Uniprocera, who is known to be, if you know California history and colonization, to be really responsible for a lot of the colonization and genocide and slavery and assimilation of Native people all along California. And he was canonized by the present Pope. And so totally erasing that whole history. And so during a demonstration, out of the frustration, these 5 women pulled down this statue of Uniprocera and threw some red paint on it. This frustration about not having the history known and the erasure. They are being prosecuted as this is a hate crime. This is huge for them. One woman who is indigenous south of the border, the imposed border, may lose her ability to stay in this country. These are young women that have they're so frustrated by this. So I have 2 questions for you. One, when we come to this, these moments where it's not a hate crime, it's so frustrated with this system. How do you approach this? How would you approach this? And then how do we support these women now, knowing that it is not a hate crime? This is calling for justice. And how do we support them? So how do we come at it when we're so in that space, and how do we support them now? So thank you.
What happened with the women and how they're treated with the legal system, that is typical. I mean, for us, for example, when we, after the occupation of Wounded Knee in 1973, they didn't take it as we were protecting our homeland. It was on our reservation. They didn't say, look at it that way. The feds, the federal government, the powers that be, They didn't look at it that way. They didn't look at the civil disobedience or whatever the term of the day was. They made us all criminals. We were all charged, you know, with federal charges, and there wasn't any misdemeanors back in those days. We all had to go to court. We had to, had to go around the country. I was a rookie. I had no idea. I was sent out all over the country and Europe and different places to speak and raise bond money, you know, because we had so many people indicted. So yeah, that's an ongoing thing. That's what this country does. The powers that be in this country do to dissidents. It doesn't matter. You know, it just so happens that most of us are people of color, but they do it to anybody and everybody that are allies. They get treated the same way, you know? And so that's just kind of a given, you know? But here's the thing about how you support. Keep your eye on the issue. What were those women doing there in the first place? You know, not the fact that they got arrested or what's going on, they're being criminalized. The issue that they stood for. Respect and honor for them in that way. Because that's what they did. You know, they know that they know the legal part, the ramifications, they know they've got court battles coming up, whatever. They understand all that, but they did it anyway. So that's where the support and attention and honor should go on the issue of why they did it. And the rest will follow. The rest will follow. Support for their legal battle will follow. That's just my suggestion.
Thank you. We have another question. I see Rachel, you have your hand up.
Hi, my name is Rachel Henry. My mom is Connie Claymore and my grandpa was Jim Claymore. And I just wanted to say,
Oh my God.
I just wanted,
Hi.
I just wanted to say how much this film meant to me, and how important your work has always been, and just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions someone wants to ask? I don't see an actual, I see Linda, you have your real hand raised.
Okay, I just wanted to follow the lead of the last speaker and say thank you to Madonna and her daughter for everything you have done in your power. Wow, the documentary was incredible. I soaked it in. It was just beautifully done. I admire your work, your courage, and your bravery. Your words spoke to me, and I'm just in awe of your work, and I just wanted to say thank you too. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is there another question from anyone? Oh, okay, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just ask you really quick. I'm a part of this organization I'm a part of. We're going to do an exhibit on the American Indian movement. And if there's one thing you'd like us to include in that, like a topic or a point or something, it would be awesome to get your input.
Good. I think, you know, what would really be important is to follow the matriarchs of the American Indian movement. I was young then, you know, and I remember all those women, and they were the ones that were consulted. They were the ones that were always in each community when we got called in. Everybody all over the country and the Indian country wanted us to come. I mean, there was a core group of American Indian movement, you know, that went around, and it was always the older women, the matriarchs of any community, Native community we went to, that were, you know, the leaders of the community. And it was the same with the American Indian movement. I mean, even the writings of the time, the pictures and things of Wounded Knee specifically in '73, talks about, and those that, in those days, it was male dominated press of any kind. Native, there was no such thing as native press. So it was always, they highlighted the men, of course, but the negotiating team of the Ogallala Civil Rights Organization, the majority of them were women. I think there was 2 or 3 men. The majority of them were women, and they were matriarchs. But you very seldom hear about them, and that's what our archives are all about. Because our, Beth got their interviews, and now they're all gone. They've all passed on, but she got there to interview them. So that was so important. The American Indian movement was a movement of families. The press is what highlighted the men, and they wanted just to see the warrior, and whatever. But in truth, the strength of the American Indian movement and all that we accomplished was because we were a movement of families, and the matriarchs were the leaders.
And don't forget the survival schools of the
Oh
time.
yeah.
There were several. There were several in South Dakota, and there's a couple of them that are still going in Minnesota. But that, the survival schools, the story of the survival schools humanizes the American Indian movement. And that was part of, the media and the pictures, all the media that came out. Even I remember going to some trials after Wounded Knee, and the police would not allow the families of the men who were going to trial. He wouldn't allow them to be anywhere near, because they didn't want the media to have pictures of these men with their families. So the whole dehumanizing of the movement. And so the survival schools is important just in that fact, because there were children who were involved in learning, and the next generation was being created to know who we are. So don't forget the survival schools.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Thanks. This is Barbara. So what can we do? How can we help these people that are being prosecuted for acts of protest, such as pulling down a statue of Columbus? What can we really do, just as a, one-on-one? Madonna, any thoughts?
Well, I think it's pretty basic. Just everything's online nowadays. Track down who they are. Read up on everything, the details of everything that, prior to the event and afterwards, and see if they have a legal committee going, and just see where you can fit in, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel like you have the ability to do. And if it's just, online stuff, that's great. That's what allies do. You step in there and you do what's there and needs to be done. You take your direction from the defendants and their organizers of their defense committee or whatever.
Really quickly, Kim has had her hand up for a while. Go ahead.
This is not Kim, it's Fred.
Oh, okay.
But I'm here with Kim, and I'd just like to say I feel really honored to be here in presence of you folks, and I really enjoyed the movie. And as a kid, I read "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee," and that ruined my career for being a white guy. So I my parents couldn't deal with me for that, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, what is going on with this stuff? And so I wanted to ask you, we saw a movie a couple of years ago about some folks up there who were protesting against a liquor store that was at the edge of the reservation. And I wondered if
Oh.
you could speak to, just the kind of like the poverty and the substance abuse. It just seems terrible. Is it, I don't know, are you guys dealing with that at all? Or is that just, I don't know what to say about that, but that's a question about that.
Well, that's all the trappings of colonization and federal Indian policies that over from the 1800s, since they formed the reservation system, has always been a process of different policies. And our people have never had any, what's the word? Any downtime. Haven't had any time to if a policy changes, it's practically overnight. Depends on the politics. Because our reservation system, I can only speak for reservation. That's my world. We have a lot of our people that don't live on reservations. That's urban issues. But so I can only speak to what I know. But yeah, the policies that, because we have a nation-to-nation relationship with the federal government, those of our people that have ratified treaties with the federal government, it's a whole different status that we have, and it's nation-to-nation. But because we are small in number, we don't have the economic power or the political power. We are always in the crosshairs, okay, of any kind of new policy or whatever, corporation, the extracting corporations have so much control in this country, and they look at our lands right away, because most of our lands are the untouched when it comes to, mining resources and stuff. So yeah, like I said, we're in the crosshairs, so we're always constantly trying to maintain on all levels. And so when it comes to society and the ills of society, we feel it right away. First of all, that's the first thing, that because the reservations, of course, we're rural, and then we're a smaller population. So yeah, we have all the ills because of for many reasons, but colonization covers it all. And it starts with the boarding school systems that destroyed family units. So many of our people still today, and there's a result of that, is we have a hard time with maintaining families. And it's all been, we're victims of that colonization. But we're also survivors. So we're pulling ourselves up, pulling ourselves out. But it's a long struggle because we have to practically be on the front lines of every issue. And we're few and far between. That's kind of generalizing the whole thing, but and then if anybody's interested, you want to know what I'm talking about, the result. Colonization starts with the doctrine of this. What's it called, Marcy? The doctrine of discovery.
Doctrine of discovery.
That's what started this whole colonization. Yeah, started this whole concept of colonization way back in the 15 something. The papal bulls of the Catholic Church started that. So that's when colonization gave the Europeans license under God to go and destroy indigenous all over the world and take their land.
We are nearing the end of our hour, but are you able to stay a little bit? I know that Jacques Leffler, you have a question? Is it okay?
Sure.
Oh, you're muted, Jacques.
Just talking away. I was in graduate school in Nebraska at the time of the uprising in the 70s, the early 70s. You know, and I came as the white guy from California, not from California, I was headed for California, from Chicago, where the Black Panthers were rumbling. And some of this, you know, talk about how to deal with things. I was just wide-eyed. I didn't know how to speak to the tribes or the Native people in Nebraska. But I certainly was impressed that they were rising up at that time. And it's hard to know how to get traction and to keep your dignity when, I would think, when you're being so attacked and you've been put down for so long. One of the first things I heard when I went to the social work graduate school is, well, you know that we still have bounties on Indians here in Nebraska. And I said, you what? I only have just peripheral understanding of what you deal with. If I weren't 85, I would have been out there marching with you when the pipelines were coming through, because that's just, it's like there are people that have no understanding of how they're killing the entire world. As well, the whole planet, as well as the people on it.
Yeah.
So I just sort of speak as a piece of history, probably more from your generation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in Michigan, where everything had a Native American name. You know, I lived near Saginaw at the confluence of the Chippewa and the Tittabawassee rivers, where people who were Black or Native American really couldn't come live in town. And when I would say things to my fellow students, they would just sort of look at me. And I've never quite known how to step with courage into supporting all of what's going on.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but keep it up.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's easier to step with courage now because the young people are waking up and moving. Yeah. And so, you know, it's not just an indigenous issue anymore.
No, it's not.
We all live on this planet. So I think now is the time to, I think it's easier to take that first step of courage because everybody's more open now.
Mm-hmm.
There.
And how to do it without rage and destruction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We are at the moment where this program has to end, but I do want to open this time up for any last comments from our speakers here tonight. Thank you so much for coming to this event and speaking with us, Madonna, Marcy, and Beth. Stick around if you want to hear.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I just want to share what some of the things that I'm involved in on the ground here. I co-founded a grassroots group called NAZO, N-A-Z-O, and that's a Lakota word for whistling an alarm. But we created this because KXL, the pipeline was within 2 or 3 miles of our western border. And so there was four man camps planned along the route of KXL. And they were all right next to the reservations in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. And so we started seeing human trafficking issues happening on and around our reservation. And so we started our group so that we could, you know, talk about it, first of all, and then figure out, okay, what are we going to do? So as a result of that, and this was right before COVID, So we were still able to meet, and we had a training on how to be a witness. We had a training on self-defense and a training on gun safety. And we were going to move into safe driving while you're in an emergency or whatever. And then COVID happened and our res shut down, which was a good thing because of the border checks that we had around our reservation, we weren't seeing the human traffic. We weren't hearing about the human trafficking that was happening. So not only does Najo focus on human trafficking, but we also focus on violence against women and children. So we do patrols in our communities, and we go where we're asked to go. If someone wants us to come and patrol their community, then that's where we'll go. And so we're finding out, not only are we, we're working with the police, and we have a relationship with them so they know when we're out and who we are and stuff like that. But we got a resolution passed through our tribal council to declare a state of emergency for women and children. So we're following up on that to move our tribal government to create meaningful drug laws, domestic violence laws, crime laws, stuff like that. So those are some of the things that we're working on here on the ground, among other things. But I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, Marcy mentioned MMIR, as one of the ongoing issues we're working on.
Yeah, we're finding out as we get involved with missing and murdered indigenous women, if you go to the website or on the Facebook page, it's crazy. I mean, they put people on that page every single day. Every single day. And they're mostly young people, like teenagers, girls and boys. It's crazy the amount of people, so our people are under attack at all over the Western Hemisphere, basically. And so, and we're right now, our family is currently involved in trying to find one of our relatives who's been missing since August 9th. And so we're in it. We know what it looks like. We know what it feels like. We're finding out that this isn't just, it's not just happening here and there or once in a while. This is something that is constant and happening every single day in Indian country. And there's no, it's not an emergency to anybody except us. There's no formal federal, state level action or anything like that. People talk about it, they try to form committees or stuff like that, but there's nothing being done about drugs in our communities and in our state. There's nothing being done about human trafficking. And the Sturgis bike rally that happens every year in South Dakota, that is the #1 place where human trafficking happens in the nation. And the largest number of Native women who get trafficked from that event annually. So it's not, this country is making it look like it's our issue.
It's all over.
And so the violence against women, the human trafficking, we're not doing that to ourselves. That's non-Indian people doing that to us. And so it's not just our issue. And it's huge. It's huge. Go to the MMIW Facebook page. I can't stay on it very long because it's too much. There's too many young people.
Yeah.
Hard.
Well, I just have to say, real short, that all the different issues that you saw in the film, those are ongoing. each generation, everybody has a responsibility of our people to protect what we have left, protect our land, our people, our children. So the issues are still there. They're still relevant today. They never change because we're land-based. So we're gonna be fighting these issues as long as we are land-based. So that's basically, the overall picture is it's still happening. It's still going on. What happened to Beth?
I'm right here. Join our mailing list.
Oh, okay.
Thank you all for staying on this. The other thing is, like, we're always trying to build capacity too. Each time we have one, we're like, okay, we guess we better start that group or start that group. But that's the whole thing is, yeah, even when you step out in courage, it's courage and fear at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the greatest thing that we're trying to, is like radicalizing the folk, it's just, you have no idea how important you are as an individual to this. And I know that, like, everything you learn and see and experience in the world tells you that you're not, but know that there are people waiting for you. Like, we're waiting for you. We need you. So, we're not going to do it all for sure, but we're really connecting. We're going to be in the Bay Area again. The week of Thanksgiving, there's a lot of things that are happening, but the UC Berkeley students, one of them is from Sonoma County. She was really excited. She worked at the library. I have to find out. She was just on a call I was on previously, and they're doing incredible things, using the film as a tool for conversation and dialogue. So you learn stuff, you think differently, and you act. So, and we always make the joke of, buying our t-shirts, but there's one of our good ones. That's our Standing Rock shirt. Didn't mean to highlight it. It's kind of weird that I did it that way. What can I do? But also, Warren, we knit things. But the thing here is that you can probably tell we're not a well-oiled machinery of nonprofit corporatism. But we are organized and we get things done with very little, but we want to see doing more oral histories and community-based work. So whether you're interested, it's info@warriorwomen.org is a way you can email any of us. And the warriorwomenfilm.com, there's the shop that really helps. And we're launching a fundraising campaign. We make jokes about reparations, but it's a great place to support, to see that we're gonna keep telling this history and, and we're building that curricula and we're doing it, we want to see people, we have models that you can then adopt locally. Now's the time. So we appreciate your time, and, if you have something you want to volunteer or something you're good at, let us know, because, that's movement at its core. Now I gotta get ready to teach my class tomorrow.
Oh, no. Well, thank you. Thank you, Beth, Madonna, Marcy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you
Reach
for
out
everyone
to
for
us.
attending. Don't forget, another great library program coming up is Ritmos que Migran, about cumbia, about migrating, how cumbia music has migrated through different Latin American countries. Keep that in mind. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Very important. Very important. Very moving.
Stay warm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
For putting on the meeting. That was beautiful. Thank you.